You can learn a lot about a person from the little habits they think no one notices. For the longest time, I believed I knew everything about Vanessa. We met the summer after college, both of us still green from our degrees, full of ambitions and flawed expectations. She was the kind of woman who made an impression without trying, striking in her own quiet way, with a sharpness behind her eyes that told you she missed nothing. I love that about her. I still do, in some strange, detached way. We bought a modest house in the suburbs just outside Seattle, close enough to the city to feel alive, far enough to breathe. 2 kids followed, James, 7, and Isla, 4, and with them came the routines. Mornings were a blur of cereal and backpacks, evenings a juggling act of dinner, homework, bedtime stories. Our life was not extraordinary, but it was full, or at least it appeared to be. But I started noticing something different this past year. Subtle at first. Vanessa would vanish around 10 p.m. each night, just after the kids were asleep and we'd settled in for a bit of quiet. It was always the same excuse, just going to call my sister real quick. Her tone was casual, breezy even. Jules had a tough day, she'd add, already halfway up the stairs with her phone in hand. It wasn't strange at first. She and Julia had always been close, twin-level closeness, even though they were 2 years apart. But what raised the hair on my neck was the tone of those calls. I couldn't make out what was being said. The conversations were always held in hushed whispers, doors closed. But the energy shifted. There was tension, emotion, and something else I couldn't quite place. Urgency, maybe. Desperation. Sometimes I'd pass the room and catch the glow of her phone lighting up her face, features pulled tight in focus, brows furrowed. It didn't look like a casual sisterly chat. It looked like secrecy, like pain, or guilt. I didn't say anything at first. That's the kind of man I am. I observe. I analyze. I wait. Years of engineering work conditioned me to troubleshoot problems systematically, without assumptions. But when something keeps tapping at the edge of your peace night after night, it's hard to ignore. Eventually, you start listening for things that aren't meant for you. The late-night calls became a pattern, like clockwork. Always after 10, always alone, and always followed by a strange sort of detachment. Vanessa would return to bed quieter, sometimes with glassy eyes, sometimes with a bitter edge to her silence. She never wanted to talk afterwards, just turned away, back facing me, breathing deep until sleep took her. I started staying up later, pretending to read or work on a proposal, ears tuned to the upstairs hallway. One night, I crept up the stairs soft as a shadow. I didn't mean to spy. Not really. But I needed to know. Her voice was low, barely audible, even through the door. But what I did hear made my stomach twist. "Can't keep doing this," she whispered. A long pause. "No, you don't get to say that now." Another pause. Then, softer, I know, but it doesn't change anything." I stepped back down the stairs before she heard me. Sat in the living room, staring at the blue screen of the TV without seeing a thing. That night, she returned to bed and said nothing, as usual. I stared at the ceiling for hours, feeling the weight of that quiet press into my chest. In the morning, I asked casually how Julia was doing. "She's okay," Vanessa said, reaching for the coffee. "Work's been brutal, though. Her boss is a nightmare." That was it. No elaboration. Just a surface-level answer and a quick redirect. I didn't press her, but I knew she was lying. I don't know what made me open Julia's Instagram page that day, but I did. A few taps, and there it was, Julia in Costa Rica. Palm trees, cocktails, and some bearded guy with sunglasses. Every photo time-stamped from the last 5 days. My heart dropped. Julia wasn't calling from a stressful office. She was on vacation, a full continent away. So who had Vanessa been whispering to night after night? I stared at the screen, cold spreading through my limbs. That evening, I watched her more closely. I saw the way her hand gripped the edge of the table during dinner. The way she kept checking her phone, subtly, like she couldn't help it. When she excused herself again at 10, I waited 5 minutes, then followed, slow, deliberate steps. The door to the guest room was cracked just enough. I stopped short when I saw her kneeling beside the bed, phone tucked between shoulder and ear, voice thick with emotion. I don't know who I am anymore," she said, wiping her cheek with the sleeve of her hoodie. "Everything I built is a lie." The voice on the other end was muffled, but her reply froze me in place. "No, don't come here. Not yet." I stepped back before I could hear more. My pulse was pounding in my ears, hands clammy. This wasn't her sister. This wasn't a cry for family support. This was something else. That night, I lay beside her, staring into the dark. I could feel the heat of her body, inches away but galaxies distant. She turned toward me at one point, resting her hand lightly on my arm, like muscle memory. "I love you," she whispered, half asleep. I didn't say it back. The next day, I began documenting everything. I needed clarity, needed truth. I bought a second phone with a voice recording app, hid it beneath the guest bed, installed a small camera in the hallway, angled toward the guest room door. Subtle enough not to draw notice, effective enough to record who she was really speaking to. I also checked our phone records. Vanessa had a secondary number listed under a prepaid carrier, something I never knew about. It wasn't on our shared account. I traced it to a burner phone. That was the moment it became real. No more guessing. She was hiding something, or someone, and it was far more intentional than I had dared to believe. Over the next few nights, I recorded the calls. Her voice was shaky, her words careful but revealing. I just can't look at him the same way anymore. I hate lying to the kids. I think he suspects. And then, one night, you said you'd leave her. That hasn't changed. That sentence hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown emotional entanglement. A love triangle. A secret life playing out under the roof of our family home. I couldn't breathe. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the footage again and again, listened to her voice over and over, trying to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the one whispering betrayal into the dark. By morning, I knew what I had to do, but I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to find out who the other person was. And when I did, I'd make sure they both understood exactly what betrayal costs. The first time I heard his voice, I felt a chill down my spine that I couldn't explain. I was reviewing the audio logs from the voice recorder I'd hidden under the guest bed. Hours of muffled whispers, some incoherent, some heartbreaking. Most nights, it was just her voice, thin and tired, dripping with a kind of romantic grief. She missed him, I could tell. She was waiting, hoping, pleading. But then came Thursday night's recording, and there he was. His voice entered about 10 minutes into the call, low, smooth, a little raspy. Confident, comforting. The way someone speaks when they know their words are enough. Soon, he said, just a little more time. The silence that followed on the recording stretched longer than it should have. I imagined her nodding, perhaps brushing away tears, just as she had the other nights. "I need more than promises," Vanessa replied, voice barely above a whisper. "She's still in the picture." He sighed. "You think I enjoy living a lie?" And that's when I knew. He was married. Whoever he was, he had a wife of his own. They were both playing house while waiting for their lives to implode. The irony twisted inside me like a knife. I should have felt rage, but all I felt was cold, a detached numbness, like my heart had pulled itself into a bunker, waiting for the emotional fallout to pass. That night, I made a plan. I cloned the burner number Vanessa had been using. Not an easy task, but the software I bought was more sophisticated than your average app. With enough patience, I gained access to the texts, call logs, even the GPS data. The messages confirmed what I suspected. Vanessa had been meeting him every other Thursday at a hotel off Highway 9. The kind of place designed for discretion. No cameras in the parking lot, cash payments accepted, no ID required. Her messages to him were desperate, hopeful. His replies were calculated, short, often curt. And then I saw the name she saved him under. E. Just one letter. No emoji. No fluff. Like a secret so dangerous, even typing it felt like a risk. I needed to see him, know who he was. So I booked a room at the same hotel. The Thursday she was due to meet him, I arrived 2 hours early, checked in, and set up a camera through a cracked window of my car, angled toward the entrance. I waited. Time crawled. The late afternoon sun dipped behind the hills. Moths danced under the yellow glow of the parking lights. Cars came and went. A couple, a delivery truck, a woman walking a barking dachshund. Then, just after 7, a black Audi rolled in. Vanessa stepped out of the passenger side. She looked beautiful, more than usual, dressed in the pale blue sweater I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago, the one that always brought out the stormy green in her eyes. She wore lipstick, heels, a version of her I hadn't seen in months. The driver stepped out a moment later. Tall, tan, dressed in a tailored wool coat that probably cost more than our mortgage. Dark hair slicked back, but not oily. Clean-shaven jaw, sharp as a scalpel. He wasn't just some office fling. He was deliberate, polished, and he had the kind of presence that filled space like smoke. I took photos, zoomed in, made sure I captured his face clearly. Then, as they walked toward the room, laughing, close, I saw him touch her lower back, gently guiding her like he'd done it 100 times. She turned slightly and kissed his cheek. A soft, lingering kiss. I didn't follow them inside. I already had more than I wanted. That night, I didn't go home. I drove for hours, radio off, just the hum of tires on asphalt and my own thoughts clawing at each other. How long had it been going on? Who else knew? And why was I still pretending? I slept in my car outside a 24-hour diner, surrounded by the smell of coffee and fried onions. By morning, I had made another decision. I needed to know who E really was. A reverse image search led me nowhere. But the license plate, I'd memorized it, gave me what I needed. A few $100 and a phone call later, a friend in DMV records pulled it for me. Ethan Michael Calder. The name hit me with a jolt. He wasn't just anyone. He was the keynote speaker from a charity gala Vanessa and I had attended 6 months ago. CEO of some mid-tier medical tech company with operations in 3 states. Wealthy, connected, married. I remembered shaking his hand, clinking glasses over tiny hors d'oeuvres, Vanessa smiling beside me. I remember her laughing at one of his jokes. So this wasn't new. This had started at least 6 months ago, probably longer. I looked up everything I could on Ethan Calder, his wife, Melissa, a pediatrician, 2 kids, one in high school, one in middle school, a house in Bellevue, glass and concrete modern. Every photo showed them smiling. Perfect. Polished. Just like us. At least, how we used to look. I watched the footage from the hidden hallway camera later that night. It showed Vanessa slipping into the guest room at 10:06 p.m. Phone in hand. She sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling. Then, just before dialing, she leaned back against the headboard and let out a soft sigh. The kind of sound you make when your heart is still tangled in someone else's hands. She dialed. He answered. I heard his voice again. I miss you already, he said. She laughed lightly. You just saw me. It's never enough. She closed her eyes, as if those words gave her oxygen. I paused the video there. It was enough. The next morning, I sent an anonymous message to Melissa Calder. Just one line and a photo. You deserve to know what your husband's doing at the Silver Maple in every other Thursday. Vanessa Harper, room 214. I used a burner email, encrypted and untraceable. No threats. No drama. Just facts. What she did with it wasn't my concern. But the fuse had been lit. 2 nights later, Vanessa didn't make her late-night call. Instead, she stood at the kitchen window long after the dishes were done, staring out into the yard like she was waiting for something. Or someone. I watched her from the hallway, unseen. Her face looked older. Tired. Maybe even afraid. When I stepped in and cleared my throat, she jumped slightly. You okay? I asked. She smiled too fast. Yeah, just thinking. About life, she said. Just things. We stood in silence. Then she turned to me with an odd, cautious softness. Do you still love me? I wasn't prepared for the question. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say no. Instead, I lied. Of course. She nodded, as if she didn't believe it. Later that night, I checked her burner phone clone. No outgoing call. No incoming text. But there was one unsent draft. It read, something's wrong. I think someone knows. The first ripple came in the form of silence. No calls. No whispers. No secret meetings. For nearly a week, Vanessa didn't slip away at night. The burner phone stayed untouched in the vent. I monitored everything. The hallway footage, the message logs, even her GPS trail. And every trace pointed to one thing. She'd gone dark. I thought maybe the message I sent to Melissa had reached its target. That the affair had detonated behind closed doors, and now Vanessa was dealing with the fallout. But then again, she was far too composed. Too measured. She still packed the kids' lunches, still wore soft sweaters on rainy mornings, still laughed at Isla's bedtime knock-knock jokes. If she was unraveling, she wore the mask well. But I knew better. Something was coming. On Wednesday night, she broke the pattern. Not by calling Ethan, but by coming to me. I was in the garage, hands deep in the lawnmower engine just to distract myself, when I heard her footsteps. Light. Hesitant. I didn't look up. You've been out here a lot lately, she said. I like the quiet. She leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. Her eyes scanned the cluttered space, like she didn't know what to do with the tension between us. Like she could feel the invisible barrier I'd built. I wanted to talk, she said. Sure. Pause. I've been thinking about things. Still not looking at her. What things? Our marriage. The words hung there, dense and unwelcome. I straightened, wiping my hands on a rag. Met her gaze. What about it? She swallowed, and for a moment, I thought she might confess. Instead, she said, we haven't really been close lately. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what this is about? Closeness? She looked down at the floor. I feel like we're drifting. I almost laughed. Drifting. As if we'd somehow floated apart on accident. Not because she dropped anchor with someone else. Marriage isn't a fairy tale, I said flatly. I know that. Do you? Her expression hardened. Why are you being like this? I tossed the rag onto the bench. Because I know when I'm being lied to. That stopped her. A flicker of panic crossed her face. Just a flash, but I saw it. I'm not. Save it. I didn't wait for a response. I walked past her, brushing her shoulder as I left the garage. I couldn't stand being in that space with her, surrounded by tools I could fix everything with, except the one thing that mattered. Inside, I pulled out my laptop and checked the camera feeds again. I didn't expect to find anything new, but this time, something was off. The footage from earlier that afternoon was missing. Just a 3-hour gap. Enough to raise red flags. I checked the file history. Someone had accessed the footage remotely. Downloaded 2 segments. The hallway cam. The guest room. I stared at the log. She knew. Somehow, Vanessa had discovered the surveillance. I should have expected it. She was too clever, too observant. Maybe it was the way I lingered when she walked upstairs. Or maybe she saw the camera itself, no matter how well I'd hidden it. But the fact that she didn't confront me told me more than words ever could. She was planning something. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift of the wind outside felt like a prelude to something crashing down. The next morning, she was gone before the sun rose. Left a note on the counter. Taking a personal day? Don't worry about dinner. I'll pick something up. V. I called her office. The receptionist confirmed she had requested the day off. But the GPS data showed her 30 miles away by noon, parked outside a coffee shop near Bellevue, not far from Ethan Calder's office. They were meeting, probably planning their next move. Damage control. That same afternoon, I received an email. Subject line, you think you're clever. No body, just an attachment. I opened it. It was a photo of me, sitting in my car, outside the Silver Maple Inn, camera in hand. So Ethan wasn't just polished. He was proactive. This was their warning shot. Their way of telling me to back off. To play nice or face whatever they were cooking up. But they underestimated me. I wasn't interested in polite retaliation. I was building something much colder. That night, I finally opened the DNA test results. James, 99. 97% match. Isla, 0%. I dropped the papers, the room tilting sideways as if the oxygen had been sucked out. I read the lines over and over, but the numbers didn't change. Isla wasn't mine. She had his eyes. I'd always known something was different, but I chalked it up to recessive genes. Now I knew better. A scream built in my chest, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't the time to fall apart. This was the time to dismantle everything. I spent the next 2 days putting together a dossier. Everything I had, text messages, voice recordings, photos, hotel logs, camera footage, the DNA results. I copied it onto a flash drive, labeled it simply, Truth, and I made 3 identical packages. One went into my safety deposit box. One was sealed in an envelope addressed to Melissa Calder. The third, I kept in my briefcase. Then I waited. Friday evening, Vanessa returned home with Thai food and a forced smile. Traffic was awful, she said, setting the bags down. I didn't respond. Over dinner, she made small talk. Asked about work. Said James had a spelling test next week. I nodded along. Pretended. After we put the kids to bed, she poured herself a glass of wine and sat beside me on the couch. Do you ever wish we could just start over? She asked. I turned to her. You mean, wipe it all clean? She nodded, swirling her wine. Yeah, just pretend none of this happened. Whatever this is. There was something calculated in her tone. She wasn't apologizing. She was testing the waters. Seeing how much I knew. I leaned in slightly. Is that what you're hoping for? A clean slate? Her eyes met mine. Maybe. I waited a beat. Then I whispered, too late for that. Her face paled. She didn't say another word the rest of the night. The next morning, the police knocked on our door. 2 uniformed officers. A black and white cruiser idling by the curb. Saturday morning sun gleaming off their badges as they stood on our porch. Vanessa opened the door before I could even stand. Her voice was syrupy sweet. Good morning, officers. Is everything okay? They asked to speak with both of us. I stepped into the foyer just as the taller one, Officer Dumas, his name tag read, cleared his throat. We received a report about potential domestic surveillance and unauthorized access to personal communications. We'd like to ask you a few questions. My eyes flicked to Vanessa. Her face betrayed nothing. This was her move. I should have known it was coming. The missing camera files. Her shift in tone. This was her laying the groundwork, painting herself as the victim before I could reveal the truth. I gestured to the living room. Of course. Come in. They stepped inside, politely declining coffee, but asked if we could sit down. Vanessa spoke first. I've just been feeling watched, she said softly. My phone's been behaving oddly. Calls dropping. Screenshots I didn't take. And I found a tiny device in our hallway. I think it was a camera. Dumas scribbled in his notepad. Do you believe your husband placed it there? Her pause was so slight most people would have missed it. I'm not sure, but I don't know who else would. Do you have reason to believe he's spying on you? Her voice faltered. We've had issues. Recently. I don't want to accuse him without proof. But I just don't feel safe. That was the knife twist. The suggestion that I was dangerous. The officers turned to me. Sir. I exhaled. Calm. Even. There are cameras in the house, I said. Placed for security reasons. Same with phone monitoring. Software I installed when our daughter started using the family tablet. I told Vanessa about it at the time. Nothing was hidden. Do you have documentation of that? Yes, I said. And I'd be happy to show you. I retrieved the user agreements from my cloud storage, the consent forms I'd printed back when we bought the cameras, the shared password log we'd kept in a drawer, her handwriting scrawled across half the sticky notes. When the officers reviewed it, their tones shifted. It wasn't enough to absolve me, but it painted her accusations as murky, a marital dispute, not a criminal case. We'd recommend you both have a conversation, Dumas said, standing. Possibly with a mediator. But unless new evidence comes up, there's nothing criminal here. Vanessa nodded, eyes wide and moist. The performance of a lifetime. After they left, she didn't speak to me for hours. The house stayed quiet, as if afraid of what might erupt. The kids sensed it. They clung to cartoons and Lego sets, whispering more than usual. By nightfall, I found her in the backyard, sitting on the swing we'd built for Isla. Her glass of wine trembled slightly in her hand. You really went to the cops, I said, leaning on the railing. You were recording me, she replied without turning. You were cheating. Her jaw tightened. I don't know what you think you know. I know enough, I said. And so does Melissa. That got her attention. She turned slowly. What did you do? I stared at her. I gave her what she deserved to see. The same way I deserved it. You had no right. No, I said. You had no right. Silence. Only the rustle of wind through the maple trees and the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. She looked so small then. Frail almost. But I didn't trust it. I'd seen what she could do when cornered. What now? She asked finally. Now. I said. Now we let the truth do what it does best. Burn everything down. The next morning, the phone rang just after 7. Vanessa answered. Her voice was low, tense. Hi. A pause. Then no. Please, can we just talk about this? Another pause. Her knuckles whitened around the receiver. She sent the kids to her sisters, she said. She says she's done. You need to fix this. Her eyes darted toward me. No, he doesn't know it's yours. She turned her back, stepping into the laundry room. But it was too late. I'd heard enough. She was pregnant. And the baby wasn't mine. I walked outside, sat on the porch steps, and let the morning sun hit my face like a slap. The world felt too loud, too bright. How long had she known? Was that why she tried to flip the narrative with the police, get ahead of what she feared I might do? A part of me wanted to confront her right there, to demand answers, to shout until my voice cracked. But instead, I waited. Waited until she came back out, pale and trembling, the way guilt always wears a person down. You're pregnant, I said. Her mouth opened, then closed. I heard you, I added. Don't bother lying. She sat down beside me. Not too close. Just enough to feel the weight of the moment pressing between us. I didn't plan this, she said. That's the most honest thing you've said in months. She looked down at her hands. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Affairs never are. Another long silence. Finally, I asked, does he know? She nodded. He panicked. Said she might take everything in the divorce. You think he'll stay with you? Her voice was barely audible. I don't know. Do you want him to? I don't know that either. I stood. Then maybe you should start figuring it out. That evening, I took the flash drive labeled Truth and slid it into the envelope marked for Ethan. No return address. Just a delivery. Inside was everything. Videos, messages, the voice recordings, and the DNA test. A final gift. A mirror to show him the cost of what he'd stolen. I didn't care what he did with it. Whether he stayed, left, imploded. I just wanted him to know he hadn't gotten away clean. That night, Vanessa packed a bag. She didn't say she was leaving. Didn't say when she'd return. Just kissed the kids goodbye, then walked past me with eyes that no longer held fire or frost. Just emptiness. The door closed behind her like a sentence being passed. I stood in the living room, the house echoing with its own silence. And then I realized something. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. 2 days later, I got an email from Melissa. Just one line. Thank you for the truth. Let me know if you ever want to talk. Attached was a photo. Her 2 kids, and her dog, sitting on a beach, smiling like the world hadn't just cracked open beneath them. And somehow, that hurt more than anything. She'd survived the storm. I was still standing in the wreckage. But not for much longer. Because tomorrow, I was going to end it all. Everything. On my terms. They say the end of a marriage feels like a death. But death is cleaner. Quieter. This felt more like a controlled demolition. An implosion slow enough to witness in real time. Brick by brick collapsing under the weight of lies, of silence, of things left unsaid for too long. But today, I wasn't just watching. Today, I was holding the detonator. Vanessa had been gone for 4 days. She texted twice, bland updates, no emotion. Said she was staying with a friend and needed space. She didn't mention Ethan, or the baby, or what she'd destroyed. I let her silence stretch. Then I called our lawyer. We'd used the same firm to draft our will, the house deed, everything. I requested a meeting, asked for a private session, no joint appearance. I wanted this clean, irreversible, and most of all, unmissable in its intent. When I walked into the office that afternoon, I handed him a folder. It contained everything. Copies of the surveillance files, DNA test results, financial logs showing how she'd siphoned joint funds to pay for hotel rooms and dinners. On top of the stack, I placed a single photo, the one I took of her kissing Ethan outside the Silver Maple Inn. He didn't ask why I wanted sole custody. He didn't question why I insisted on the clause excluding Ethan Calder from being anywhere near my children. He just nodded and got to work. By morning, the papers were filed. By evening, they were served. I wasn't home when it happened. I took the kids to my sister's for the night. They thought it was a movie night, popcorn and sleeping bags. They didn't see the courier arrive at the townhouse where Vanessa was staying. But she called. Of course she did. I didn't answer the first 3 calls. Let them ring out. Let the panic stew. On the 4th, I picked up. Her voice was sharp, frantic. What the hell is this, Alex? I said nothing. Full custody? You're locking me out of the house. You want Ethan on a restraining order? Are you trying to destroy me? I waited a beat, then said quietly, no. You already did that part. I'm just building what comes next. She cursed under her breath. You don't get to act like the victim. You spied on me. You manipulated. I cut her off. And you cheated. You lied. You brought a child into this world with a man who never even had the decency to look me in the eye. Silence. I could hear her breathing, heavy, unsteady. I didn't plan for any of this, she said eventually. You planned enough to lie about who the father was, I replied. Enough to stage your betrayal beneath my roof. Enough to involve the police to cover your own tracks. Alex, no, I said. You don't get to speak. Not tonight. I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet without the kids. Too clean. Every shadow held a memory. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like something coming undone. So I wrote her a letter. Not a bitter one. Not a manifesto. Just the truth. _Vanessa. I loved you longer than I should have. I forgave more than I ever admitted to myself. You weren't the first person to make mistakes, but you were the first to make them so thoroughly, so repeatedly, and then pretend the consequences didn't matter. You shattered something that will never fully heal, not because of one affair, but because you let it become a pattern of deceit. You watched me sleep beside you, tucked our children into bed, and still chose a different life behind a closed door each night. But I don't hate you. I pity you. Because what you had with him will never be built on truth. It will never be free of ghosts. And the man you chose? He only ever met the version of you that was willing to live a lie. That's not love. That's escape. And someday, when it all crumbles, I hope you finally understand what you lost. Alex _ I left the letter on the kitchen counter. Not for her to find now. 4 years from now, if she ever visits this place again. The next week, I transferred ownership of the house into a trust for James and Isla. If she tried to fight the clause, she'd hit a legal wall. The court date was set. She didn't contest custody. Not after seeing the DNA report entered into the record. She cried, though, in the hallway outside the courtroom. Not because she lost custody. I think she knew that was coming. She cried because Melissa showed up. With Ethan's children. They walked past Vanessa without a glance. Melissa's face was carved from stone. Cold. Dignified. She paused only once, in front of me. Thank you, she said simply. For the warning. For not letting it stay hidden. I nodded. Then I watched as she turned, her kids close, and walked out of both our lives. Ethan never showed up in court. I heard later that he'd resigned from his company. Something about personal issues. The board buried the story. Vanessa didn't return to our house. She stayed in that apartment in Kirkland, the one she shared briefly with Ethan before Melissa served her own divorce papers. 2 weeks later, she miscarried. A neighbor told me she collapsed on her way to the car, bleeding. Ethan wasn't there. He'd already ghosted her. No texts. No visits. Nothing. The baby that cost us everything never drew breath. And still, I didn't feel joy. I felt empty. Because grief doesn't care who's right. It just demands to be felt. Months passed. The house changed, slowly, subtly. I moved Vanessa's things into the attic, not out of bitterness but necessity. I repainted the bedroom, replaced the mattress. The kids adjusted better than I did. They laughed again, learned to sleep through the night without asking where Mommy was. They didn't know what she'd done, and I wasn't going to tell them, not yet. Maybe not ever. Some truths don't need to be inherited. Some wounds stop bleeding when you stop picking at them. And me? I started waking up at 6 a.m. again, took early walks, rebuilt my office, cooked breakfast from scratch. Small rituals that reconnected me to the man I used to be. I began seeing someone, too. A woman named Elise. Kind, soft-spoken, a single mother with eyes that studied the world like it was both breakable and beautiful. We haven't said the L word yet. I'm not sure I believe in it anymore. But I believe in kindness. I believe in showing up. In honesty. That's enough. For now. Last week, Vanessa asked to see the kids. We met at the park. She brought a stuffed animal for Isla and a book for James. They hugged her politely, but there was distance in their eyes. Afterwards, she sat across from me on the bench, watching them swing. I read your letter, she said quietly. I figured. I deserved worse. You got exactly what you earned. She nodded. I'll never stop loving them, she said. I don't expect you to. Do you hate me? I thought about it. No, I said. I don't. She looked surprised. I hate what you did. But hating you won't make any of it better. She stared at the ground. I'm sorry, she whispered. I stood up. You're sorry it happened. Or you're sorry you got caught. Her silence was the answer. As I walked away, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not whole. But free.